So welcome to my CSS tutorial. So today we are going to discuss and talk about CSS, how CSS works. All right. So and the type of CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it's a programming language used in the web to describe the style and presentation of the web pages written in HTML or XML. All right, CSS allow developers to control the layout, colors, fonts, and spacing and other visual aspects of a web page. Okay, by separating the contents HTML from the presentation of CSS. All right, so we the web design can create consistent and visual website across different device and screen size. Okay, so talking about that, we should be able to talk about the screen size as well. All right, so that any website you are building can be a mobile responsive website. So the first thing I'm going to do here now, I'm going to create an HTML document. So I will click here and create a file. So I will name this file index.html. All right, so the first I'm going to bring my HTML codes. All right, so we believe we all understand this particular place. All right, so I'm going to write, like I said, we have like 3 ways of writing CSS. All right, let's talk about the type of CSS. So we have inline CSS, and this type of CSS is applied directly to the individual HTML element using the style attribute within the HTML tag. So I'll be giving you an example of inline CSS. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to come up with the H1. All right, so here now I'm going to write inline. CSS. All right, so here now I'm going to type so I would bring p tag, sorry, so here I'm going to write my first inline CSS project. All right, so now if you have something like this and you want to apply CSS to it, the inline CSS, this is what you do. You come to this place and type style. So you type style. Okay, before then let's view it, so we'll see how our work look like. All right, so we have inline and we have internal CSS, then we have external CSS. So this is how it look like without any CSS. So now we are going to add the CSS. So here I'm going to say the color should be red. So I will say color. The color should be, let's give it red. All right, so I'm going to say the font size. The font size should be like 50. So I will just say 50 pixel. All right, so let's see what we have. All right, so you can see now. So this is the work of the inline CSS, and that is how to write the codes. So next I'm going to talk about internal CSS. So we'll be talking about the internal CSS. All right, so we talk about inline CSS already, so we'll be talking about internal CSS. All right, so internal CSS is placed within the HTML documents. All right, so it applies styles to elements on that specific page for. So I'll be giving you an example for that. And to do that, let's say if we want to work on this this particular line of code here. So what I'm going to do now is I'll come to the heading here. Let me do it at the heading here. I'll come to the heading here and type style. All right, so okay, let me go like this. I'll type style, then close it. So within the style, we are going to have our CSS there. So since I'll be working on the P, I will say, okay, P. Since I'll be working on the paragraph, so I will just pick this P here, close it. Okay, and let's go like this. Then curly braces. So I'm going to open the curly braces. All right, so inside here, I'm going to add color. So then the color should be, let me have a blue violet. All right, so I'm going to view our code now. Let's view it and see what we have. All right, so if you can see below, let me increase the size so you can see. So I will increase the size right now by adding a font size. So I'll add font size. I'll make it 60 pixel. All right, so I'll make it 60 pixel. Then I'll go back so you can see. So this is what we have. All right, so this is what we have here. So we have something like this. All right, so this is how to write internal CSS. So the next one, we are going to talk about external. So let's talk about external CSS. So I'm still going to copy this over here, paste this. So I will say my first external CSS. So I will take the rest off. So external CSS is stored in a separate .css file and linked to the HTML document using the link element in the head section. All right, so I'm going to repeat that again. External CSS is stored in a separate .css file and linked to the HTML document using the link element in the head section. All right, so I'm going to do that, give you an example so you can see what I'm saying. And to do that, so I will come to this place, to my left hand side, create a file just as we did for index.html. So here I'm going to say create a file. Then I will say style because I'm styling. So I will just say style.css. All right, so this is the extension. So now if you check here, we have a file for HTML and we have a file for CSS. All right, since we'll be working on CSS, we'll be doing things on CSS, and we want that effect to take place in index.html. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to link it up here. So I will come here. Sorry, I'll have to take off this tag. So I'll come here and type link. So I'm going to go with link. So the link is going to come with rel, style sheets, and href. So inside the href here, you remember when we talk about linking web pages in HTML. So that is exactly how to link this CSS as well. So I'm going to say style.css. All right. So we have linked our CSS. So sometimes I put the type. What I'm going to do here now, so let me give this particular thing a div so you see. You already know what div is. So I'll bring a div container and wrap everything here within the div container. So I'll do it this way. So within here, I'm going to copy these 2 lines of code and bring them here. I'll cut it, then paste it here. All right, so this is all right. So now I'm going to work on this stuff. Now we talk about attribute in, we talk about our attributes in HTML. So I'm going to use a class attribute here. So I will just say class. So inside this class now, I'm going to have external. So I will just name it external. So in this CSS now, I'm going to call this particular attribute here, which is the class attribute, because I want to work on things here. So I will just call it. I'll call it, since it's a class attribute, since we are dealing with a class attribute. So I'm going to bring the sign for class, which is dot, then the attribute name, which is external. All right, so I'm going to bring the curly bracket. So inside here, then I will type let me say background color. Background color should be let's have a black. All right, so background color, so I'm going to give it so I'm going to give it text align, should be center. All right, so okay, I think we are good with that. So I will just say, okay, let me give it color. So I will say color, the color should be white. All right, so now let's see what we have. All right, so we have this so this is our outputs now. This is what the code is showing. So you can see the work of the external CSS, and this external CSS make our code, neat, so that the readability of this code will be exactly like a professional code, not just like writing jargons. Having bunch of code in one particular template is disgusting. So the best way to write, the modern way to write your HTML and CSS is by dealing with the external CSS, having a separate files for them. So you have your HTML file, then you have your CSS file. So this is how to write the external CSS. All right, so the next thing we are going to look now, we are going to talk about CSS selector. CSS selectors are patterns used to select and target HTML elements in a document so that you can apply styles to them. All right, so I will be giving you some example of CSS selectors. All right, so number one, we have element selector. Select all elements of a specific type. So let's talk about the element selector. So for example, I will pick something like, let's say I want to work on just the, so I'm going to pick the H1. All right, so I will pick this one. And when we have something like this, all right, so you can see it take effect on this particular one because we have just CSS selectors and we select only the H1. All right, so if I decide to increase the font size, so I will be able to like increase it. So I can decide to put the font size to 70 pixel. So, and this is it. All right, so this is element selector. So we have the class selector as well. So the first one we did was a class selector. So but I'm going to show you again. So class selector is this: you having a div with an attribute of, with the attribute name is class selector. All right, so this is class selector. All right, so class selector, then we have the ID selector. So if I change this particular CSS here to ID, all right, so if I have something like this and I come here and I change this and I change this to ID, so I could just say external. All right, so I have an ID external now. So if I still go, we should have exactly like that. So you can see it still work the same way. So now I have the ID selector. So we have the element selector, we have the class selector, and we have ID selector. Then we have the descendant selector. We have the descendant selector. For example, maybe we want to work on a list of something, so we can decide to have something like this. All right, so let's go here. For example, maybe you want to work on a list of something. You have UL, so you can have LI. All right, then you have the curly brace, so you can say list style type. Maybe the list style type should be cycle. All right, so this is descendant selector. All right, so let's talk about child selector. All right, so let me give you an example of child selector. So when we talk about child selector, select elements that are directly, children of a specific element. All right, like donated by the greater than sign, So, and to do that, let's say if you want to work on nav, you can do something like this. Then have something like this. Then you have this. Then you have this. All right, so inside here now I could just say margin should be 0. All right, so I will just say the margin should be 0. So this is child selector. So we have adjacent. All right, so I believe you know what adjacent means. So an element selects an element that is immediately preceded by a specific element, like donated by a plus. All right, like a plus sign. So I'll be giving you an example on that. So, and to do that, you just have to have something like, let's say when we have H1. So if I have H1 now, sorry, so I'll have H1. Then I can say maybe I want something exactly, I could just say plus this. Then I'll have my curly brace. All right, so I'll have my curly brace. Then inside here I could just say the font weight. So I could just say the font weight. The font weight should be, let me say 500. All right, so the font weight is going to take effect on H1 and the P, which is the paragraph. All right, So next we are going to talk about attribute selector. So select element with a specific attribute or attribute value. All right, for example, this actually take place on, let's make use of the input. So I'm going to bring out the input tags. All right, so here now I'm going to have this particular bracket. So inside here, let's have a type like the type of the inputs. So I'm going to have a quote here. All right, so inside this quote we are going to have text to show the input type. All right, so at the end here I'm going to have my curly brace. All right, so especially this thing I'm doing now, let's say if I want to work on the text that is inside the input, so I could just say now border, the border. So the border, okay, the border now should be 1 pixel, then solid, then let's give it the color of let me give it color hash 6cc. All right, so we have something like this. So this is it. All right, let me do something so you can understand what I'm saying here. So here I'm going to bring an input. So I will say an input and okay, so let's have something like this. So let me view my screen and see what we have. All right, so this is it. You can see this this input you're seeing. You can see the border. We have a border with a round edge. All right, so we have a border now with a round edge. So if I'm typing now, you see, so that is exactly what the the effect is. So back here, so we are still going to have a pseudo class selector. We have a pseudo class selector. Select element based on their state or position, such as the hover. All right, like the hover effect, first child, for the first child element. So I'll be giving you example. Let's say if we have an anchor tag, and we want anytime you place a mouse on it. Okay, let me have this. All right, so I will be bringing an anchor tag here. So let's say I have a button. So, and here I have an anchor tag inside the button, and we have login here. All right, let's say I want to work on this thing now, this A. So I will just say A. So I will just say, I will do over. So I will say over, then curly brace, over, then curly brace. So inside here, I'm going to have a color red whenever I over on it. So I will just say red. All right, so let's see if this is going to take effect. So we have something like this. You can see now when I over on it, you can see now. So the color is changing. Anytime I place my mouse on it, it change. So that is the work of that. All right, so this is the little one we can talk about. So I want to explain something here. So what I'm going to explain right now is I want to explain this to you. So I'm going to delete all this and explain just one single thing to you. All right, so I want to, so this particular external here, this hash, this external here is a selector. All right, so I want you to get that this is a selector. All right, so this particular background color, all right, this background color is a property. So this is property 1, property 2, property 3, and property 4. So here we have the value of the property. So this is the value. So whatever, let's say the background is a property, what you apply to it is the value. So you assigning a value to this property makes this whole thing the code. So we have the selector, we have the property, then we have the value. All right, so that is one thing you need to so you can apply value to each and every one of the codes.